This is an eagle, and in fact in this garden it's amazing. There's a lot of eagles in the sky, a lot of birds. I hope you guys can actually see them. There's a lot more. There we go, we've got a few more here. So anyway, I wanted to wow, that is beautiful. I wanted to speak about birds, eagles, and the way that birds are mentioned in the Quran. Chapter 67, Surah Mulk, it mentions, God says, "Do you not see the birds above you, with their wings folded in and sometimes outspread? None holds them up except the most merciful. He is of all things seeing." And this was a beautiful verse to actually reflect about the distinction between the explanations that we have mechanically and the explanations that we have in terms of metaphysics, in terms of the actual ontology, the actual state of affairs. So what's beautiful about this verse is that Allah mentions, do you not see the sky, do you not see the birds in the sky? And they have their wings going out and in. So Allah's mentioned, look, you have this thing and you have this mechanical explanation. You have this wings going up and down. And then the next verse says, the same verse, carries on, and none holds them up except Ar-Rahman, meaning the most merciful, God. So we have a clear distinction going on here, which is quite beautiful. And that clear distinction is between the how and the why. So there's a howness of how the birds are up there. There's no mystery because you have wings, right? So the birds are flying through wings. That's the mechanical explanation. But that how explanation doesn't do away with the why, which is that God is the creator of those birds. That how-why distinction is not really made by new atheists. They just say, when people are asking why, they actually mean how. That's a pretty pathetic counter. How and why are two different things. So it's a category mistake. People are like, science explains or is an attempt to explain how the world works. Therefore, we don't need God. It's just silly, right? So if you have, what's an object around me? Okay, you have that house behind me, right? So that house, I can explain how that house is built. A mechanical explanation. You have bricks, you have mortar, you have pillars, beams, concrete, certain foundations. You have all this stuff. So you can explain it mechanically. Imagine if I give you an hour and I drill you for an hour with a mechanical explanation, and then I say to you, therefore no one made it, therefore there's no designer, therefore there's no God. You'd say that's not God, but designer of the car, of the house, architect. You'd say that's ridiculous, that's stupid. The how doesn't do away with the why. The explanation of how the house is built does not explain away the architect, the creator. In the same way, the world, the science attempts to explain how the world works. It's an attempt, and it's the application of reason to the natural world. But that doesn't mean that does away with the why, which is why the world exists and why the world exists in the particular way that it does. So there is no conflict from that perspective between the how and the why, between science and spirituality, between God and the scientific sort of explanation or the attempt to try and reach a sort of state of affairs or understand how the world is actually functioning. And this distinction is very important to make because people, again, like I mentioned, feeble-minded, weak-minded atheists, right? They just use these really crude arguments. Oh, science has explained this, therefore there's no God. Ha 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 ha. No, mate, that's just stupid. Yeah, and you're making us all embarrassed as the human species with that kind of ridiculous argument. So what you need to do, and there's a really beautiful, I'm not sure if you guys can see. There we go. That's another beautiful moth or whatever it is. And we have no problem with a how and a why. And I don't know why I keep chasing this thing, but anyway, it's beautiful. What we need to realize is that the study of the how does not do away with the why. In fact, it amplifies the why. studying nature makes you appreciate the power, majesty, might of the Creator, which is what the early Muslims like Ibn Haytham, later on the Christian scientists, what they saw science as. They saw science, and of course I mention a lot of the times the Muslim scientists, but I want to mention, I think, some of the Christian scientists as well, because of course they played a massive role in terms of science. They saw this as the Lord's work, right? They saw the study of the world as, all right, so that's how God is showing his power, his might, his beauty by showing the variety of species and this type of stuff. And so we really have to build this in people again. Why? Because atheists are doing a disservice to science, because the vast majority of people on earth are not atheists. And when they propagate this nonsense that science undermines God, you actually turn religious people away from science, which is a tragedy, because of course science does not undermine God. That's just your assumption. So if you really truly care about science, you should be speaking about the compatibility between the existence of God and science, rather than using science as a way of undermining God, which is what your Führer, Richard Dawkins, continuously tries to do. So I hope in this short video you've learnt a thing or two, and I'm going to go back to the eagles again, because they are absolutely beautiful. Allahu Akbar. Allah is truly the greatest. Look at that. Wow.